Hello, hey, and good evening, everyone. Dr. Jonathan Shepherd here. It is so good to be with you all on another Friday evening of Ask the Doctors. As I said, I'm Dr. Jonathan Shepherd, Chief Medical Director of Hope Health Systems, located in Woodlawn, Maryland. I'm glad to be with you on another Friday. It has been such a awesome week, and after enjoying a wonderful holiday last week, Thanksgiving, and I hope that you had a good time with your friends and family. And if you traveled, I pray that you traveled safely and that you're back home. And if you're even still away, as some people are, I pray that you're able to get back home safely. I see people are already coming on in the room, and I love it. And yeah, thank you, Mary Harris. And I appreciate it. Was so good to see you last week while I was in Pennsylvania. And yeah, so please come on in the room and let me know that you're watching. Go ahead and share and share and let people know. Even as our presenters will be coming on, I'll be sharing and liking because we had such an awesome outpour last week as we talked about grief, part one of our series on what's wrong. It's supposed to be the happiest time of the year. And so, with that said, I really just listened to what people were saying that we need to have part two. And if anything was like part one, part two is going to be as good and will supersede what we even saw last week. Just want to help set the room. And again, let me know you're out there. Please share and let me know that you are listening and watching. I do want to thank all those persons who will go back and watch the replays. Literally, we have triple the number of views who will go back and watch the replays. So thank you so much. And I do know some people, because they missed some of the information, they'll go back and play again, even when they were live. And I love that. I love that. Or even when we have to go on hiatus, people say, I just got to go back and listen to it. Because let me tell you, when you hear the information over and over again, it sticks with you. And so there is nothing wrong with that. So if you want to play us 30,000 times, that is good because it will stick with you. And this is information that you can utilize. I do want to let you know Hope Health Systems, which is where I am located as far as my place of employment. This is our website down below. You can go there if you're in need of direct care services. If you know that you're in the need of direct care services while in the midst of this grief episode or depression or whatever it might be, go to us. We would definitely help you out. I am loving hearing from our admissions persons that people are actually letting them know that you heard about us. You heard about us while on Ask the Doctors. And so that's what this is all about. It's about information. It's about being educational and then being inspirational. We have to leave you with some hope. How dare we be called Hope Health Systems and not leave you with just a little bit of hope at the end? And so we plan to do that just today. So thank you for joining us. I see you, Chris, and it is great to see you out there. And oh, Sandy Harrison, I think this must be the mother of one of our presenters today. So my God, thank you. It was so good to see you almost 2 months ago, and I'll say more about that when our presenter comes on. And thank you, Dr. Malcolm. Thank you for being consistent and watching us. So let me go ahead. Let's get this party started. I don't want to delay it too long here. The first person who is coming on, I am tremendously blessed to know her. It is an awesome privilege to be in her presence. Very humble person, but she's doing tremendous work here in Baltimore. So much so that even nationally, she was recognized by CNN and nominated as a CNN hero. And I believe she was a CNN hero, and she'll tell you more about that. But I'm just grateful that I'm able to know Annette March Greer. So I'm going to bring her on and let's have her come on in. Hello, Annette.
Hello, Dr. Shepherd.
How are you doing?
I'm great, and thank you for this invitation to be here tonight.
Oh, I'm honored. Thank you for accepting. Thank you for accepting. And so I would like for you to tell the people a little bit about yourself, what you do, and as we get this broadcast started.
Thank you. I am president and founder of Roberta's House Family Grief Support Center in Baltimore. We're also located in Prince George's County. I am a registered nurse and I'm also a licensed mortician. And Roberta's House happens to be one of the first African American, or I would say, bereavement centers that serves primarily people of color.
Wow, wow. And we're going to talk a little bit about that because those type of places, as you know, do not exist in our country.
That's right.
Um, Actually, let's stay right there real quick. Why is that so important that we have a place that is able to recognize the idiosyncrasies for blacks and grief?
Well, it is so desperately needed because historically, we as African Americans have suppressed much of our grief. We can look back at the times of slavery and see that we were not allowed to even bury our dead. We were not allowed to gather and celebrate or congregate. And oftentimes, families were separated and torn apart, and the best that we could do to remain alive or to survive was to suppress that pain and grief and just move on. And we still do that today. We've learned to pass that down from generation to generation. And unfortunately, the mortality rate in the African American community is 30% higher than any other surrounding county areas and cultures. So, we talk about going or we go to a funeral like we're going to the supermarket, weekly, if you really think about it. Um, just
Wow.
conversations, that's what we hear, that's what we talk about. We've got a funeral to go to this week, next week, so forth. And we die at a much earlier age, and there's more of a frequency of death because of poor health, because of violence, because of lack of health care, many inequities that
Wow.
we all know about. And so this was an F, a real motivation for me, just growing up in the funeral industry with my parents. I lived on the second floor of a funeral home until I was 21 years old.
Wow.
So death was a everyday part of my life. Downstairs in the funeral parlor, people were laid out every day. It was 4 and 5 people that I would pass through in order to exit my front door.
Mm.
And so to see people mourning and grieving I became very sensitized to, but I think it taught me much about how we deal with our grief, um, how people suffer with their grief, how sometimes grief becomes complicated and unresolved and can really affect someone's entire life. And children weren't being addressed or acknowledged for their own grief experiences. And so this really became a passion of mine to do something about it and to create a resource and education around how we grieve and how we get through this real human experience that we all have to go through.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Man, you have said such powerful words. I'm going to say just a couple of things. I'm going to introduce our next guest. But you said something at the very beginning that really stuck with me because that's where I feel that I'm even right now of how we go to the funeral or go to various funerals as if we're going to the supermarket or as if we're going to the gas station, just something routine.
Yeah.
And it's not routine.
And it's not. I mean, for other cultures, it's not as frequent and as routine as we attend and participate.
Wow. And I'll be honest with you, I literally just told someone today because of the multiple deaths that have occurred even within my family over the last 3 months, that I've had to pick and choose where I go in regards to funerals because I have to heal myself.
Absolutely.
Sitting there and just remembering all that I'm going through doesn't put me in a good mental space. And so,
Right.
thank you for saying that. You just helped somebody.
And you and I both are caregivers in this industry, and so we experience that secondary trauma or vicarious trauma hearing these stories every day. And we have to recognize our limits and our boundaries in order to be able to serve and help someone else.
Absolutely, absolutely. Oh, this is awesome, man. I love it. Awesome kickoff. The next gentleman I have known for such a long time. He is the Dr. Aubrey Harrison. I say that with such joy and almost proud. I can't be as proud of his as his parents, who I do love and adore. Uh, Dr. Aubrey Harrison, come on in, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. Well, thank you for having me.
Well, yes, sir. Yes, and I forgot to mention this young man just got married about 6 weeks ago.
Wow,
I
congratulations.
did. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, had a wonderful wedding, wonderful, beautiful wedding. Come on, tell the people a little bit about this. I already done spoiled a little bit about your marriage, but go
Yeah.
ahead.
So, as Dr. Shepard said, I just got married about six weeks ago. So, joyous occasion. But I live here in Washington, D.C., and I'm a psychologist doing therapy for educators, students, CEOs, leaders of schools around the city, specifically around trauma, grief, loss, and many of their experiences that they are dealing with on a daily basis. So, um, doing some amazing work, and just to hear you, Annette, like name that we are literally going to funerals like we go to the grocery store. That is literally what I'm hearing in the room. Like it's like a revolving door where almost every session is like another death or another experience that they've had to go through. So very real.
And that's not normal. That's not
It is
normal.
not normal. It's not
Yeah,
normal. No. And
yeah,
I feel like there's been, of course, an uptick since the pandemic, right? Where not only are we experiencing kind of that like spike that has been a trend for decades, right? But it's spiked even more for us
Right.
because we've got kind of this compound of different types of deaths and bereavement.
Right. Right.
yeah, yeah. This is awesome,
And
awesome, awesome. Go
what
ahead.
what
Hmm.
really what really impacted, well, COVID brought grief to everyone's attention.
It
You know,
did.
every every culture, every nationality, everybody. However, unfortunately, we in our culture and with African Americans encountered it even greater. And what really is a great asset to our healing is our traditions. We have good funerals. We have, when I say good funerals, it's a celebratory event in many ways, that there's singing, there's praising, there's it's called the going home celebration, which
Hmm.
really is the starting point of our healing process,
Hmm.
the acknowledgement. And yet, because of the pandemic, we weren't even able to do that. Families weren't able to be with their loved ones dying. They weren't able to carry on with rituals and customs of, and then in the very beginning, we could only allow two people
Right.
to attend a
Hmm.
funeral service. I mean, 10 people to attend a
Mhm.
funeral service. And that was harsh. That was really, that played a big impact on the trauma that people experienced because they weren't even able to be with their loved ones dying in the hospital. So
Yeah.
I really foresee that the grief that we are encountering because of this pandemic is gonna result in a lot of complicated grief.
Yeah, yeah. Did you want to comment on that, Aubrey, before we go further?
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head, right? Like it really is going to look like complicated grief. And I say that like with an asterisk, right? Like it comes with all of this other stuff that
Hmm.
we don't talk about.
Hmm.
um, and so it's like we've had these previous experiences, um, and oftentimes grief looks different for us. Whereas on a larger scale, it's like grief. I think Annette, you'll probably agree with this. Like this comment, like just get over it, right?
Right.
Like, or you got to just move on, right? And that is not realistic,
No,
but
it's
that's
not.
how society sees it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And actually, that's the next question. So that's a perfect segue because I want to talk about what grief looks like in various different populations. So
Hmm.
let's look at how grief looks like in men versus women.
Hmm.
Let's look at how it looks like in adults versus youth.
Mhm.
So who wants to start out with that? You want to start out with that, Aubrey? How grief might look different in men versus women?
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting, at least in my work. So I always like to think about the actual practice, right? Because we have the research, but when you have the lived experiences, that
Mhm.
really speaks to the richness of what's happening. So what I'm currently experiencing in some of my sessions is that for men, grief is something that is held on to like this sticky ball
Mhm.
that they just hold on to and don't know how to let go of, right?
Wow.
And really process. And it's one that is a ball that they try to tuck in their pocket, almost like gum, right? But it gets stuck. And so it's like, well, what
Good.
do I do with this? How do I figure this out? I don't know what to do with this, so I'm just gonna leave it here and act like it's not there, right? And what I'm
Wow.
seeing with women is it's still sticky, right? It's still kind of like, what do I do with this? But there is this process of just trying to let it go. And so it looks a little bit different because there is some sort of processing, some sort of like, what is the next step for me to get through this? And so that's kind of like the experience that I'm currently seeing, Trini.
Hmm.
For youth compared to adults, I think it's very much like the modeling, right? So they're looking to their parents to
Mhm.
say, what do I do with this? Like how do I grieve? How do I experience this? And they really don't have the like models because a lot of times it's like, well, I don't know what to do with it and I'm gonna hide it as an adult. And so for you, we just don't talk about it. And
Wow.
that becomes kind of that like icky process that I've kind of described.
Hmm. Hmm.
Did you want to comment on some of that and that? And I'm going to move it to the some other group.
What I've learned, and you're right, the people that we work with are our greatest teachers. Um, Women have been reared and raised to be expressive, to talk about their grief, to express their emotions, to cry, um, to be very emotional, and it's acceptable. Whereas men have a tendency, to have this. They've been reared to be strong, to be the protector, and of course they are less apt to show their emotions and feelings. So they internalize their grief. I find that they oftentimes need to do something physical in order to act out their grief. So they may want to fix something. They may want to play ball, go play basketball, and just exert that energy, or football, or whatever it might be, and really are not comfortable expressing their emotions, especially around women. So they internalize their grief more. Um, and we've had to create a male group specifically for males because oftentimes in our support groups, it would be majority women and we would get a few males, and the males wouldn't really talk very much. They would just, listen. But they are experiencing the same things that the women are experiencing. It's just that it's more permissible and acceptable for women to talk about it. And oftentimes men don't know what to do for their love mate, or their the female who is wants to talk about their grief and loss, and they just don't know what to do with that. With youth, I find that, or teens and children, they oftentimes don't have the vocabulary that we as adults can express our pain and anger and rage and all of that. So teens and children will act out their behavior. So, anytime we experience a threat to ourselves or some type of fear, which grief brings about a lot of fear about the unknown, about life, about the future, about everything. Anytime we experience that level of fear, it kicks in our internal alarm, that fight, flight, or freeze response.
Mhm.
And adults kind of feel those emotions and can sort of integrate it into their language, but children can't do that. Children will act on it before they begin to speak about it. So they
Mhm.
get this rush of energy that they need to stand up on a table, throw things, fight, do whatever they need to do physically in order to relieve and express that pain. And that's why it's so important for adults. And oftentimes, children are the silent mourners because adults think that, oh, they'll just get over it and grow out of it, they'll be okay. And so they don't engage young people in conversations around the death. Children will oftentimes just hear what
Mhm.
adults are saying, but they're not being talked to. They're not being asked questions about their grief, and so they remain silent in their
Mhm.
grieving process. But that's why it's so important that adults know how to ask young people what they are feeling as well about the loss and the death of their loved ones, and help them to process what they're experiencing as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
I
don't be scared to ask.
Right,
right.
absolutely.
Don't be scared.
I
And
remember,
I
and this is one story where the father of this young boy was murdered, and he was only 6 years old, and he was always an A student. But he began to act out in school and break all of the rules, got, um, detention and so forth. And the mother was so surprised about the son and, acting out. And she said, "Why? What is wrong with you? Why are you doing this?" And the 6 year old said, "Because I know you don't want me to." And so I said, he knows you don't want him to act out like this, but yet he's acting out. So my question to the parent was, tell me, does he ever see you cry or
Mhm.
talk about dad? And she said, no, she was trying to protect him. So
Mhm.
she was carrying this super strong image, and she would go upstairs to her bedroom and close the door and do all of her mourning and crying there alone because she didn't want the kids to see her.
Yeah.
And so, of course, this 6 year old feels that nobody's hurting like me. So he's going to push all of her buttons to make her feel what he's feeling. And that's
Right.
by acting out. And so that's how kids tend to communicate, by acting out, because they don't know how to express themselves.
Go ahead, Aubrey. You're going to say something.
Yeah, I was gonna add to that. It kids don't know how to express themselves oftentimes, as you just said, in that because the parents are going into a room and closing the door,
Hmm.
acting as if the child doesn't have emotions as
Right,
well. And
right,
so it's this idea of like, I'm protecting you when it actually becomes harmful, right? Because it's like the child has emotions that they're trying to process themselves
right.
and they don't know what to do. And so it becomes these acting out, it becomes anger, all these things that they see at school, at home. It's like,
Rick,
what's happening? Well,
right? They
we got
can
to talk about it.
right. That a student can begin to get involved in gangs or,
Hmm.
drug behavior. I'm sure you've seen this, Dr. Shepherd, where some kid just does a 180-degree turn on everything. And the
Yeah.
parent is like, because they look to parents as being the fixers, you know,
Right.
Hmm.
Right. Right.
supposed to make everything okay and right.
Yeah.
And how well a child or a teen adapts and adjusts to the loss really lies a lot of weight on the adults in that
Absolutely.
child's life as how they model grieving.
Absolutely.
So we encourage parents, cry with your children, hug, hold,
Hmm.
comfort each other,
Mhm.
express your pain, let them know that some things we just can't fix in life.
Hmm.
Yep. Yeah, this is good. I'm gonna reset the room a little bit and thank you. We got some wonderful questions that we have coming through. Dr. Malcolm and your mom has been asking some questions. I don't know if I could call her Dr. Harrison too, and Dr. Hayes, who's also a consistent watch viewer, I should say. So I'm gonna start with Dr. Malcolm first because she asked the question, and then we're going to get back to some of the questions we had thought about at the beginning of the show. So Dr. Malcolm asked this question. She says, and I'm going to start with you, Aubrey, on this. She said, question for men, does the need or requirement to be strong for the family hinder the grief process?
Mm. It's a great question. Um, it does, because it is this idea that to be strong means that I can't cry. To be strong means that I can't be vulnerable, right? To be strong means that I can't grieve. And so it's this like antiquated idea that in order to be a man and in order to be strong and take care of my family, all of these other things are not acceptable. And we got to switch that language.
Mhm.
Because to be strong means that you are able to grieve, right? To be strong means that you can cry and you're able to release and relieve and do all those things that are cathartic for your body so that when you come back, you're whole for your family.
Mhm,
That's
mhm.
good. That's good.
Absolutely.
Here's the
Absolutely.
next. Here's the next question. So I want to get them all in because you all got some tremendous answers. So I know if I have you both do the question, but I won't be able to get everything in. Annette, here's the next question by Sandy. She said, is the issue that grief is so heavy that we don't want to experience it and we deny the feeling?
Mhm.
So what she's asking about is it so the fact that grief is just so overwhelming for us. It's just the burden of grief. You know, is it that we just deny because we just don't want to have that heaviness anymore.
Absolutely. Well, grief is overwhelming, and especially when there's been multiple deaths. And I have to say that because oftentimes it can be so overwhelming that denial plays a important role in the healing process. Um, with multiple griefs, I remember one woman saying, she had three deaths within 9 months of very close family members. And she was so overwhelmed. Grieving is about also reflecting, remembering, having memories to think about, um, that sort of are integrated in your experience of your healing. And she was so overwhelmed that she didn't know who to grieve for first, second, or third, or whether or not she
Wow.
should deal with them all at one time. She was just so overwhelmed, and the pain was so great.
Wow.
And grief comes with a lot of pain.
Yes.
And so, believe it or not, denial is a defense mechanism that we all have.
Mhm.
It depends on how much denial we're in, but it does protect us and allow us to handle our grief in small doses.
Yeah.
We need to take it in small doses, because if we thought about the magnitude and the weight of um, the entirety of the loss, it might really take us out. It might, I mean, people do die of a broken heart. People have strokes. People have mental breakdowns,
Yep.
panic attacks. All
Hmm.
kinds of things happen because, our we become so overwhelmed, and it triggers a mental health possibly a disorder.
Mhm.
So denial actually isn't always a bad thing. It just depends on how strong or how long that denial lasts. But sometimes, in order to keep us grounded, sometimes we have to pretend that it was a dream for a day just to get through one
Mm.
day. But then we wake up the next day and we're reminded that this death has really happened.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Oh, this is so. You were speaking to me in regards to that. You know, I've had the multiple deaths just over the last 3 months. I've had significant family members to die within 4 weeks of each other. I was just cleaning my kitchen table. I had still the funeral programs for both my aunt and my uncle on there. One was literally uh, in October, the other one November, 4 weeks apart. It's a lot. And I've been saying to some of the people recently who know me, whether it be at the job or outside of the job or wherever, that I finally feel like the fog is lifting up from around my head. I mean, that's the way in which I am able to describe. I'm a very visual person, and when you go through this, as you're talking about, it literally is for me. It's like a fog, just like set in. Fog is very low lying clouds,
Mhm,
and it's hard to see.
mhm.
You
Hmm.
know things are there, but you just can't see where you're going. You can't feel your direction.
Right, right.
As soon as you get to it, something you can now see it up close. So really, as I describe it, for me, it's like me walking through a fog. I think I know where I'm going, but sometimes it doesn't feel like I am going in a specific place, or even that I'm journeying to a specific designation. And so I know people out there know exactly what I'm talking about. I see you. I see you. I see you out there because people are saying they're liking and sharing. So I understand where you're at. So thank you for sharing that because that's real. That's real. And I'm loving these questions. We got some more questions who are coming through. And so with that said, I just want people to know the fog can lift. All right,
Hmm.
it can lift, and it may not lift as fast as others.
Right.
Right?
It will lift eventually, because
Right.
reality is always going to check in.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah.
I tell people that reality is a way of helping us to adjust to the changes that we have to make when we've experienced the death of someone very close, someone that we're closely attached to. Because grief will come in different levels for depending on our relationship, depending on our attachment, depending on the dependency, many different factors, as to how we grieve over the loss of someone. And so I always say that reality will only allow you to stay in denial for a certain time. And then it's going to remind you that you have to make some adjustments.
Hmm.
You have to make some external, internal, and spiritual adjustments.
Absolutely.
Those external adjustments are the physical adjustments, that we can't see or touch them anymore. They're not going to walk through that door. We can't pick up the phone to call them. We can't depend on them to do something for us that they always did. Those are the external adjustments. And then we have the what we call internal adjustments, that we have to make too, because oftentimes we identify with people the person who's died. Our identity is connected
Hmm.
to them. When a wife loses her husband, her whole identity is going to shift.
Mhm.
Um, And with children, their parent is, they're losing a parent. They are also going to have to shift their identity. Who am I now that I don't have a mother or a father? So all of that has to take place with the individual, and they'll get reminders. The child that goes back to school on Parent Day has to make that identity shift, or when Mother's Day or Father's Day comes around and they don't have that parent available. Excuse me. You're visible. And so this identity shift is really critical for people. And reality every now and then is gonna check in and say, you know what, you have to make some adjustments in how you're thinking and how you're going about life now and then.
Yeah.
So yeah, denial, we can try our best, but it can't last forever.
Yeah. I like what Harold Harrison. I might have to steal that acrostic, FOG, feeling overwhelming grief. I
Yeah.
like that. I like that. Aubrey, why don't you answer the next question? How do we support? And thank you, Jamie, for watching all the way. We do have viewers across the country. She's all the way in Kansas, and we have folks from. We even have some international watchers. So I really appreciate you being a part, Jamie. And I know she's got some upcoming shows I'm going to be a part of. So she asked the question, how do we support people who grieve the loss of loved ones for
Mm.
years? For years.
Right.
And then does grief end?
Does
Yeah.
grief
So,
that
Does
question?
grief
d-
end?
Oh, that's a
and
good one.
yeah. So I'm gonna answer the second one first, and then I'll get to the top one. I will say that grief does not end, right? It is something that will last, but it gets better, right? And it lessens. So I'm gonna use this fog analogy as we think about how to support family members for years, right? Um, if there's fog that's over them, right? Or if the weather has changed and it's raining and you notice that they're having a rainy day, then you are the one that brings the umbrella for them, right? You are the support. You are the person that is standing there and saying, it's raining and it's tough, right? It's raining, you're getting wet. How can I support you right now, right? Today is that day that you are really feeling it, right? It's coming down heavy. And I just want to acknowledge that, right? And so being there, being present, not pushing it away is one of the many ways that we can support our family members for years and recognizing that it could be a year, it could be 20 years, right? There's still going to be a feeling that comes up. There's still going to be an emotion that's tied to that person or those people who have been lost and who are no longer with us.
Mm.
And I want to use this other analogy,
Mhm.
Dr. Shepherd, that I think really helps people just think about grief, right? If you think
Mhm.
about a box as your life, and some people have heard this before, but think about your box, a box as your life, and there's a pain button on the side of the box, and the ball on the inside is grief, right? The ball is huge at the beginning, but over time that ball gets smaller. So it's still gonna hit the pain button, right? Initially, it's always hitting the pain button. It feels like it's overwhelming, right? That fog.
Wow.
But over time, it gets smaller. It doesn't mean that that little ball doesn't hit the pain button and doesn't hurt, right? And that there aren't memories that happen, but it gets smaller. And sometimes it gets inflated by the anniversary, right? By
Mhm.
another death, right?
Mhm.
By Mother's Day coming up. All
Mhm.
these things that can inflate it back up. But again, it doesn't mean that that
Mhm.
experience is gone and that it doesn't get better.
Wow. That's good. Very,
Wow.
very good. Would you want to tackle the next one? Uh,
Well, can
yeah,
I just
yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
support what Aubrey is saying? I agree with you 100%. Grief is a lifelong healing process. It doesn't end. It, like you said, the pain is not as raw as in the beginning, but as time moves on, it's like a scar. We see the scar, but it's not as painful as it was initially. But we always remember, I
We
have
always
talked
remember.
to seniors who had miscarriages, when they 60,
Uh,
70 years ago,
wow.
and they remember and think about that child,
Mm,
as if what age they would be at that point in that time. And
Hmm.
they say when they close their eyes, they look forward to seeing that child one day,
wow.
so they they think about that child consistently, and things that we can do to support someone else. You were right on it. Being there to support. First of all, people need to be listened to, without judgment, uh,
Hmm.
without us, interrupting or saying what we think they should be doing or how they should be moving along. People are processing the grief the best way they know how, and they have to do that by storytelling. They have to do that by telling the story over and over again sometimes. And to have a good listener is the greatest support that they need. Not being afraid to see the tears. Don't stop the tears. The tears are cleansing, they're purifying. They're letting go of those emotions, allowing them to express their anger, even with God. Um,
Hmm.
if they feel like God has betrayed them or not answered their prayer, just allow them to express it. It's not up to you to fix them or to try to. You can't fix what has happened, but being present, being listening, being compassionate and understanding, and knowing that as they talk through it more and you allow them that space to be free, to be natural, to be themselves, that's the greatest gift that you can give them.
It's very good. Very good. I want to take Dr. Malcolm's question next. It says, at what rate does the refusal to grieve or go through the grief process turn into depression
Mm.
Hmm.
or any other mental, emotional issues? All right.
Hmm.
You want to start with that, Dr. Harrison?
Yeah, that's a great one right there. So, um, when we think about that refusal to grieve or going through the grief process, it turns into kind of a mental or emotional issue when it becomes something that someone no longer is able to acknowledge, right? And so it usually gets pushed down, it usually sucks them and it changes. You often see the change in who they are, and how they function. And so it is this process where it's like, as Annette was saying, if we don't provide someone the space to experience that, to cry, to release, then they're often holding it in. And then that process becomes something that's like, well, now I'm depressed because I don't have a way out, right? It becomes like hopelessness. It becomes this experience like, well, why am I living now? Right? I don't know why I'm here because that person is no longer here and not feeling like anyone can understand that. And so that's sometimes where it becomes a process. And you start to see some of those symptoms come up, which I could talk about a little bit, but I'll let Annette chime in.
So when an individual decides or refuses to allow themselves to grieve or heal, one thing that leads to two things: either they choose to resign, which can, or self-destruct.
Mm-hmm.
So there are three options. There's adjustment, which hopefully we all are. We want to adjust and adapt because
Hmm.
because death of someone is a loss, and it's like a challenge or a change that we have to adjust to. And if we choose to resign, that means status quo. We don't decide. We choose to do nothing about, because grieving is, believe it or not, grieving is a shattering experience, but it's also a transformative experience.
Sure.
If,
Yes, it is.
if we choose to adjust, we can grow through this experience and heal in such a way that we develop into um, higher, what do I want to say, higher human beings, more with greater wisdom, with greater intellect, with a greater outlook on life. Even with the most tragic losses, people find hope by moving in directions that bring purpose, and the person's life or their death is not in vain.
Mm-hmm.
That's a choice that's made, and oftentimes people don't realize that they have a choice when it comes to loss.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we try to help people recognize that there's a choice that you have. You can make a choice to heal, or you can have a choice to resign or self-destruct. And we show them what that looks like. So self-destruction means when you choose not to change, when you choose not to adjust to this new life or this new norm. And what that means is that your internal alarm remains on. I also want to say that depression is a normal part of the grief process,
Okay.
because so we can expect some depression, because depression is the separation anxiety, that we're letting go of the past, and we're having to adjust to this new future now, and there's going to be some depression with that, which is normal. But however, it can become extreme and clinical um, if it is not addressed, or if it lasts too long, or if the person does not receive the support that they need. Um, and so this self-destruction spiral that people can end up going down is really a form of distress that can lead, we say, dis-ease leads to disease.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens is when we choose not to adapt, we are only increasing our stress level. We're only increasing that internal alarm to remain on consistently without any relaxation, or without any, let's say, it's like holding our breath and never exhaling.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And we can only do that but for so long before we pass out.
Yep.
And we can only internalize so much of this stress and pain and anger until it begins to destroy us.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the heart weakens, the blood pressure remains high, we end up having a stroke, our immune system drops after a while, and we become susceptible to diseases and everything else because of our refusal to adapt and to adjust, to change. It only increases our stress levels. So it can become, it can lead to our own disease and death if we refuse to adapt and change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good, good, good. I want people to pick that up. I did write down the 3 responses to grief that you can have: adjust, resign, or self destruct. Um, I thought about some of those movies that this message is going to self destruct. And then
And
after you read,
we can do that unknowingly,
oh,
or let's
absolutely.
say unconsciously. The
Mm-hmm.
person who just decides to give up living,
Oh, absolutely.
just to quit,
Absolutely.
and finds no purpose in living anymore. The elderly person that stops eating, or the,
Mhm.
the husband that decides to stop going to the doctor to, get care.
Mhm.
We
Mm-hmm.
can do it very unconsciously, just by losing hope.
And let
Yes.
me tell you, there was a lack of hope that happened during the pandemic. 'Cause that's what
Yep.
happened. And so that's why I even push. I mean, even for this particular podcast or broadcast to be on, we push people because people stopped going to the doctor. And that's what happened.
Right.
People started self destructing. They were going to get their preventative care. They stopped going to get their mammograms. They stopped going to get their prostate cancer screenings. They stopped getting their hypertension or high blood pressure screenings, glucose screenings for diabetes, their eyes checked, just various different things. And so we do encourage you not to allow yourself to lose hope to the point to where you become stuck and paralyzed, where you do self-destruct. We all are going to make adjustments. You have to make an adjustment. All right. You have no choice. This pandemic has said you will adjust, even if you don't want to adjust, and you've had to do it. And you could say, okay, I've adjusted, but I'm just going to resign. That means I quit. All right. That means that I'm here, but I throw in the towel.
Right.
Or I'm just going kaboom. I'm just going to self-destruct, because this is different from resign. And I'm going to close out here because I hear a good segue. Resigning and self-destructing is different because you can still be functioning and yet doing things that will cause you to blow up. When you find yourself still trying to operate when you have not dealt with what is hurting you with the disease because of the dis-ease that is inside of you, you will find yourself blowing up. It's not because you quit or resign. It's because you didn't take care of yourself. And that's what we find ourselves so many times. Because, girl, I got to go to work. I don't care. We were talking about this last week because we in this country, and this was one of our questions, so I'm just going to touch on it a little bit before we close out here. We in this country, on the Western culture, we don't take loss as serious. I won't say as serious. We approach loss at a very different way in which the Eastern culture does. They may have where they have various days where you can have mental health days to sit out and be able to recover and recoup. This Western culture, capitalistic society, Earl, we had the funeral that Tuesday. I was back at work on Thursday, and you better be on time.
Right.
And so that's where we self-destruct. So that's why I like. So some people might go, well, what's the difference, Dr. Shepard, with what Annette was talking about? Oh, I hear you clearly, between the resign, just quitting and stopping versus the self-destruct, because people are self-destructing while they're still trying to move. And that's the dangerous piece, because that's where I see so many people operating. I see so many parents operating like that. And they're saying, well, little Johnny said, while mom's still trying to keep it up. And I like what you all were saying about how parents were hiding in their own bedrooms and not showing forth. That's self-destruction. Because what's happening, you're falling apart right in front of your own children. This is good. This is good. This is good. This is good. I know you believe in a mental health day, Dr. Hayes. We need to have mental health months. I'm not talking about a day. When you go through what I've gone through, I'll just be transparent. When you've gone through what I've gone through, when you've lost an aunt and uncle that was significant to your family, when you've had a nephew to die in 2020, 7 years old, when you had your grandmother to die just less than 2 years from the aunt and uncle who came from her, that requires me to take time to make sure that Jonathan is okay. And I have no problem with saying that.
That's right.
Because I'm not going to self-destruct.
Right.
I ain't going to let somebody keep pushing me to the point. And when I say somebody, I'm talking about me.
All right. We're our own worst enemy.
Yeah. So this is good. I had to get that out. I know I'm not talk that much, but both of y'all done inspired me because.
That's right.
So let's do this. Let's do this. We're going to preach. Oh Lord, I see preach and teach. I see her. We're going to provide. That's when I saw that P. Thank you, Sandy Harrison. We're going to provide some words of comfort and inspiration to the viewer who is grieving now, because there are people who are grieving now. I could even imagine people are watching this now and tears are streaming down their eyes. That's not imaginary. That's some of the messages I've gotten. People who hit me up on Facebook Messenger. Dr. Shepard, I just lost 3 people in my family this year, 2021. I heard what you all were talking about, and I'm crying because you let me know it's okay if I don't go to another funeral this year.
That's right.
It was like, I don't even know the person, but they got the permission. Ooh, that's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
It heard someone else say,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay if you don't go to that next funeral.
Yeah.
So I want you to think about these words as you're about to go forward. I'm going to let Annette start. I'm going to let Aubrey start with the question. But I'm going to start with you, Annette. I want you just to think about some words of comfort, inspiration to the viewer as we begin to wind up. Don't go nowhere, you all, because we got some things we want to announce. But you need to hear this, and you need to forward this particular episode to somebody who you know is wrestling with grief even now. So, what were some of the words that you would share with those, Annette, who may be grieving currently?
First, I would like to say that you, as a grieving person who's lost someone significant, you have a right to mourn.
Mm.
You have a right to be angry. You have a right to have a range of emotions. You have a right to even experience joy, sadness, anger. You have a right to mourn, and you need to give yourself that permission. And sometimes you need to let others know you have a right to mourn, because mourning is about healing.
Mm.
And don't shame yourself. Don't be embarrassed by your grief. Allow yourself to mourn, because that is the process of healing. And just very quickly, I want you to say you must take an active role in your healing process. You do have a choice in that. And an
Mm.
active role means that it requires work on your part to actually work towards your healing process. And that means acknowledging the loss. That means remembering your loved one and not trying to get rid of those memories. Those memories are your treasure. It means experiencing the pain. Pain has a purpose. It shatters us, but it's shattering you in order to be recreated and reformed into a new person with new wisdom. So remember that the pain has a purpose. Guilt is not there to tear you apart, it's there to help you reevaluate your life and your worldview. You also must make those adjustments externally, internally, and spiritually. Have your powwow with God if you need to. He understands you. And the last, at some point, you will reach a point where you will have those memories that you will cherish for a lifetime, and you will relocate your spiritual, your relationship to one of spiritual with your loved one. And you will then be ready to reinvest in your new life.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I'll comment at the end. Come on, Aubrey.
I don't know. I don't know how I can follow that up, and that I mean
That's
that's the
fine. Just
closer right
agree.
there. So
Just
I,
agree.
yeah, I'm just gonna agree and say like, yes, you have a right to mourn. You have a right to not be okay, right? You have a right to have the rainy days, to have the fog, to have the joy, like Annette said, where it feels sunny, and the next day it might not. And so it is okay, and you do have an active process in this. So it does require you to have some support systems in place, right? To reach out to that family member, friend, whoever who you know you can cry with, you can lean on, who can listen to you, because it's important.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna end with this before we close out with the final announcement. So don't go nowhere. But pain has a purpose. Grief has a purpose. Grief will stop you from living if you allow it to. It will paralyze you if you allow it to. But it does have a purpose. Pain has a purpose. And Annette just told you it will reshape you. That's what it's going to
Mhm.
do.
That's right.
You know, pain will cause you to do things that you normally would not do. When you go into surgery, you don't expect to have a painless surgery. You know that pain is a part of the healing process. If there's something within you that needs to be taken out, you got to go through the pain. And I know some people say, well, I don't want to go through grief. What's got to be taken out of me, Dr. Shepherd? We've been talking a lot about people, but we remember grief is more than just people.
Absolutely.
It deals with so much loss, financial loss, loss of a job, loss of health. You haven't died, but you just can't do what you used to be able to do. So many loss of independence. I mean, just so much can be said. And all of that will create pain. Nothing wrong with pain if you know that it has a purpose and you know how to be able to allow it to reshape you. And if you stop taking those painkillers that numbs you,
Right,
allows you
Yep.
to not
right,
feel it no more. Oh, I know where I'm going with this. That's some of those unhealthy ways that we talked about
right.
last week. You got to go back and watch that.
That's
And some
right.
of these we didn't get to that today, which is okay. But some of us are taking some painkillers that's just numbing the grief and is not allowing us to experience
Right.
the
Hmm.
fullness of the healing that can occur
That's right.
with us. This has just been awesome, awesome, awesome. I gotta stop. I told y'all we're going 60 minutes.
It went fast.
So
It goes
quick.
by so fast. It's been tremendous, tremendous information. I'm looking at all the comments and the engagement, and people are really loving what we're saying. And I really appreciate you. I want people to know that Ask the Doctors is not just something that is just here to fill some time. Ask the Doctors is here to provide inspiration, education, and information. And let me tell you, we get the top people to come on here. These are bona fide experts, and I want these bona fide experts to let you know where you can find them. Why don't we start with you, Dr. Aubrey Harrison? Where can people find you if they want to reach out to you? I don't know if you're even accepting patients, if that's what you have going on. Let the people know, and then Annette's going to come and tell the people where Roberta's house. You got an event even tomorrow, so I want you to talk about that tomorrow. About that event tomorrow. So go ahead, Aubrey.
Yeah. So um, you all can find me on Instagram. Name is Aubrey Harrison. I have a personal account you can check out. Also, one called the Therapy Brothers. And so it is really geared towards men, Black men, and giving them a space every month just to release. And so check us out there. And also, if you want to email me, Aubrey at medstarwise.org.
Okay. Good, good, good. Oh, I said at IG, on IG, I meant to say. So please forgive me in my comments. So go ahead and find him. I didn't realize that you had that other social media site. I got to connect you with another one of my friends who's been on the podcast. I'm looking to bring him back, Dr. Vince, who's out in Atlanta. You got to meet him. Uh,
Yeah, definitely.
yes, yes. When we end this broadcast, I want to make the connection. You got to meet him. All right, Annette, let us know about where people can go to find Roberta's house and what awesome event you have tomorrow.
Sure. Robertashouse.org is our website. You'll find a series of all types of programs for children, adults, males around grief and trauma. Um, Tomorrow, Saturday, from 4 to 6, we'll be having a candlelight service of remembrance for individuals who will be honoring their loved ones who've lost loved ones this past year. And so that will also be on our website as well as FaceTime. It will be live streamed. So look for Roberta's House Facebook, Roberta's House MD.
All right, all right, all right. Oh, did I put that? Did I say that? Do I have the right website? Is it Roberta's House MD or robertashouse.org?
It's robertashouse.org, but for the Facebook um, address, it's Roberta's House MD.
Okay, all right, all right.
Robertashouse.org.
Okay, great, 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 great. All right, so please go there and be a part of that. These ceremonies are so significant, and I thank Annette for emphasizing and just having this. This is an annual event, if I'm not
Yes,
mistaken.
yes. And unfortunately, it's been virtual for the last 2 years. We hope that next year we can come back to a live event because we normally have about 500 people in attendance.
Wow,
Wow.
Yes, for
wow.
this event. I mean, we recognize that people need the holidays is a very difficult time, and people need to do something special to honor and give tribute to their loved ones, especially this time of the year.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, and thank you for all the work that you do with Roberta's House, and thank you, Dr. Aubrey Harris. I see both of you all just doing continual great things, and I look to be a part of those things to help push you. And if you're in need of direct mental health services and you live in the DMV area, come on over to Hope Health Systems. We'll do you some good, like I say. And we do have services that literally for all ages, from the youngest to the eldest. And I serve as chief medical director there. We'll make sure you get paired up with a therapist and, if need be, a provider, a psychiatrist. But we are one of those places where we are in tune with the society and community that we work in. I'll say that again because I need to say that after the week I've seen. What's up with other organizations? I'm not trying to throw off on nobody, but there are organizations that are not in tune with the community. Hope Health Systems is in tune with the Baltimore DMV area. And that is so important when it comes to being able to get the help that you need when you are struggling emotionally and mentally. And so please don't be afraid. You can go to hopehealthsystems.com, 410-265-8737. And like I just said, we'll do you some good. This has been an awesome show. Awesome show. I really appreciate it. We'll be back next week. And I'm not sure just yet how we're going to conclude this whole grief series. I don't know. We might have to do part 3 again. Text me, write to me through Facebook, social media. Let me know if you do part 3. But I really am wanting to help people to get through these holidays, get through them successfully so that we can prepare for a wonderful new year in 2020. All right. Thank you all so much. We're going to go ahead and sign off here. Thank you again, Dr. Malcolm. Thank you, Cynthia Foley, Dr. Hayes, Sandy Harrison. So many people, I'm not sure if I called out everybody's name who commented. I always like to shout out those people who at least commented, let me know you're watching. Again, I thank all those who will watch the replays. And please have a wonderful weekend. Safe. Our presenters, please stay put. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Take care. We'll see you next week, Friday at 7 o'clock.